Thank you very much to IIIT and to the American Journal of Islamic Studies for allowing me to be here today and to speak, and for all the people who are present and hearing us now. I would like to put some PowerPoints. Just a sec. Then we should be here. Wait. Okay. Hopefully you are able to see it now, the PowerPoints. So my talk will be on Abdallah Bin Bayyah and his view of tajdeed in ʻuṣūl al-fiqh. Now, ʻuṣūl al-fiqh has been, the tajdeed, the renewal of ʻuṣūl al-fiqh has been a topic that has been widely shared in the contemporary Islamic thought, and many people have offered different proposals of renewal of ʻuṣūl al-fiqh. And Abdullah Bin Bayyah is an important voice of contemporary Islamic thought, and he has written...
sorry if I could interrupt you. I only see part of your screen.
Okay. Do you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry for the interruption. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. So Abdullah Bin Bayyah is an important voice added to a number of scholars who have tried to give life to ʻuṣūl al-fiqh and to make it more respondent to modern contemporary needs of the Muslim community. And I would like today to just present his thought and his proposal view on the tajdeed of ʻuṣūl al-fiqh. First of all, Bin Bayyah gives a kind of summary of idea of the different proposals that have been put forward towards ʻuṣūl al-fiqh. And according to him, the proposals of renewal in ʻuṣūl al-fiqh has been various. One of them has been the call to simplify the very material or substance, al-madda, of ʻuṣūl al-fiqh. The second proposal has been the attempt to trim or alleviate ʻuṣūl al-fiqh from the perceived unnecessary parts like logics and kalam. Parts of it is also the attempt to simplify the terminology of ʻuṣūl al-fiqh and render it more modern, if we can say like this. And the third type of attempt is to surpass the conditions stipulated in the ʻuṣūl al-fiqh in determining the efficient cause, al-illah, and relying only on wisdom and maslahah. Now, Bin Bayyah recognizes the benefit of some of these calls, but he considers them that they lack objectives and clarity, and they do not bring substantive changes or dynamics to the ʻuṣūl al-fiqh. He, in the meantime, highlights three other proposals of renewal of ʻuṣūl al-fiqh that, according to him, are a danger to Sharia and to the way Islamic law functions. And those are the call to rely on hikmah and maslahah, unrestricted by any determinants, al-dawabit, of ta'leel, or by any of the instruments of applying the legal norms. The second type is the call to rely on maqasid, devoid from any usuli consideration and divested from any considerations of particular indicators, dalail. And the third is the call for the historicization and contextualization of the Shariatic text, a kind of progressive hermeneutics, if we can say like this. And according to Bin Bayyah, all of these claims of tajdeed are a threat, as I said, to the eternal validity of the Shariatic text, because they do not take usul into consideration and they do not bring maqasid and usul in a symbiotic relationship with each other. He himself posits his proposal of renewal in the, let's say, in a kind of traditionalist mode. The idea is that, as we'll see, and I will explain, for Bin Bayyah, the substance of usul al-fiqh does not need to change. So he is against any revisionist or a kind of modernist, progressist idea of tajdeed, of renewal. In his view, it is only working with the surah of usul al-fiqh, with the form, and shaping the different aspect of already recognized framework of usul al-fiqh that we can bring changes to the very nature or to the very structure of usul al-fiqh. So what he explains is that instead of abandoning the existing usuli frameworks in favor of a revisionist or a modernist reconstruction of usul al-fiqh, what he aims in his project of renewal, that I will explain shortly, is that he seeks adjustments and reform through through arranging the already recognized aspect of usul al-fiqh in a different form. So through working through form, he tries to bring new divisions or exceptions or distinctions, or expand or restrict the scope of traditional usuli frameworks. And in a moment, you will realize what does he really mean by this. But first of all, before starting, I would like to highlight the fact that for Bin Bayyah, there is an important aspect of his usul project of renewal of usul al-fiqh. So what he does is that he equates maslaha or maqasid with istidlal, and tries to reconstruct the history of usul al-fiqh in a way that incorporates maslaha and maqasid, and in a way that makes maslaha and maqasid foundational for the understanding at the beginning genealogy of usul al-fiqh. So what do I mean by this is that in his reconstruction of usul al-fiqh history, Bin Bayyah presents the development of the science of usul al-fiqh as the attempt to strike a balance between text and istidlal, between nas and istidlal, inference. So istidlal normally refer to all the, let's say, non-textual considerations and framework of usul al-fiqh like istislah, public welfare, sadd al-dhara'a, eliminating the pretext, or istihsan, Jewish preference, etc. Now, given that the istidlali consideration, according to Bin Bayyah, constitute an attempt to reason beyond the text, or to understand the textual sources in the light of their intended meaning, this means that istidlal is in reality a search for the maslaha or maqasid. Now, this equation of the maqasid with istidlal, or this interlink between them, allows Bin Bayyah to speak about a maqasidi approach or a maqasidi school of thought from the time of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. So from the time of the Sahaba. So what he does is that he mentioned that he takes the ijtihad of the Sahaba, like, for example, Abu Bakr's decision to fight as apostates the Arab tribes that refused to pay zakat, or his decision to collect the Quran in one mushaf, or appoint the next caliph after him, or Umar bin Khattab refused to apply the had punishment for theft during the time of famine. He interprets all the ijtihad of the Sahaba that goes beyond the, let's say, plain meaning of the text as instances of ijtihad based on istidlal. And because it is based on istidlal, it is also based on the maqasidi reasoning. And in his view, the start of usul al-fiqh, which is ijtihad of Sahaba and the attempt to understand the textual sources, is also the start of maqasid itself. And this kind of ijtihad through maqasid or istidlali aspect of the ijtihad of the companions was passed to the followers, to the tabi'een, and is represented by the school of Ahl al-Medina, which later on passed to Imam Malik and to his emphasis of sadd al-dhara'a and istislah, etc. And for Bin Bayyah, also the attempt to strike a balance between text and istidlal, and to see beyond the text to try to figure out the legal norms on different specific situations, is also at the foundation of the formation of the schools of Islamic law. In his view, he presents the Imam Shafi'i and his negative stance against istihsan and sadd al-dhara'a and other aspect of istidlal as the originator and the initiator of the debate on maqasid. And the other schools of law, which took a more istidlali aspect, instead of Shafi'i that took a more textual approach towards Islamic law, the attempt of the other schools of law to reply to the Shafi'i school and to find legitimacy for the istidlali aspect for istihsan, istislah, and other istidlali aspects, this attempt, which was initiated by the negative aspect of Imam Shafi'i, is actually the heart of the beginning of the Maqasidi, of the continuation of the Maqasidi school of law. So in the reconstruction of Islamic, of Usul al-Fiqh, Bin Bayyah paradoxically makes Imam Shafi'i the initiator and the forerunner of the Maqasidi approach. And in his view, the theory of Maqasid emerged as a necessary legal framework that provided the required criteria and boundaries for istidlal. So somehow Maqasid make the istidlal a recognizable and acceptable usuli framework. And in Bin Bayyah's narrative, the history of usul al-fiqh becomes the history of Maqasid itself. And this reconstruction of the history of Islamic law allows him to ground the legitimacy of Maqasid approach, to ground it in the legitimacy of usul fiqh itself. And later on, the Maqasidi approach continued with the idea of tahsin wa taqbih, the good and the repellent, and other notions. But the equation of Maqasid with istidlal is important for his project of tajdeed. Then, because in Bin Bayyah's view, and now I enter more in his theory actually, Bin Bayyah, in laying out the structure of his project, he draws from the Aristotelian theory of causation, the material, the formal, the efficient, and the final cause. Known in Islamic logic as al-ilal al-arba', the four form of causation, Bin Bayyah conceived this form as the only means through which scholars can realize change and provide explanation for things. In his view, the material, the madda of usul al-fiqh, is not susceptible to change or reform. It is the realm of the formal, a surah, i.e. the form which through its shape makes the matter responsible towards a specific function, that most of the tajdeed in usul al-fiqh takes place. The role of maqasid deliberations appears predominantly in the element of tarkib, which is a part of the surah, which means the structuring, that for Bin Bayyah consists in the assembling or putting together the parts of a compound reality. By this, he means the construction of the universals from its particulars, and vice versa. Also, the structuring of two particulars by putting them in relation with each other. Now, in a broader perspective, okay, this will come a little bit later. So, in a broader perspective, Bin Bayyah divides, assigns the role of formal causation in usul al-fiqh as manifested in three major legal aspects that constitute the heart of usul fiqh itself, which is ijtihad fi dalalat al-alfaz, ijtihad in the linguistic indicators, ijtihad through maqasid, and the third is ijtihad through tahqiq al-manat, a verification of the hinge. For Bin Bayyah, the role of the surah is crucial in bringing the necessary tajdeed in all the above mentioned types of ijtihad, and he dedicates one book to each of them actually. But he restricts the role of maqasid mainly on the second kind of ijtihad. More precisely, Bin Bayyah situates the role of maqasid in the renewal of usul al-fiqh within what he calls manzumatu ta'lil, within the system of ratiocination, of the system of ta'lil, if we can say it like this. Now, within this system, he ascribes to maqasid the principal role of enabling the construction of universals and preserving the balance between universals and the particulars. That's the main role of maqasid. For him, maqasid considerations can be crucial also in expanding the reach and the scope of the system of ta'lil. In this context, for Bin Bayyah, any process of ta'lil should be based on two muqaddimah, or preludes, or I don't know how we can translate that, that these two muqaddimah should precede any thinking on ta'lil or any thinking on qiyas, etc. And all of them, of these two muqaddimas, pertain to the domain of maqasid. The first is taking into consideration the logicality of usul al-fiqh. Here, the role of logical demonstration, burhan, is crucial. Bin Bayyah conceives the universality and the certainty of the premises of syllogistic analogy as important for expanding the understanding of the juristic and inductive analogy. And the second muqaddimah is considering the objectives of Sharia, universal or particular, original or dependent, etc. Now, I will expand more on these muqaddimas so that we can understand better what he means by that. So, regarding the first muqaddimah, Bin Bayyah emphasized the importance of logical demonstration for usul al-fiqh. In his view, the syllogistic analogy, qiyas al-shumuli, can serve to assess the correctness and the epistemic validity of the conclusions reached by juristic analogy and plays an essential role in rearranging and refining the proofs of usul as well as testing the validity of some of its framework for the modern condition. Now, the crucial role of logic within usul for Bin Bayyah resides in its ability to structure the legal maxims and arrange its proofs in order to make them suitable for the expected results. In Bin Bayyah's view, the role of logic in creating or refining concepts and determining the contents in order to build new frameworks or test the readiness of old frameworks is essential. Now, the role of Maqasid here is that being the incubator of the universals, Maqasids are particularly important for the syllogistic analogy, which in itself is a form of analogy from a universal to a particular, and which is relevant to other types of juristic analogy. Now, Bin Bayyah expands the role of ta'lil not only on qiyas, juristic qiyas and inductive qiyas, but another form of qiyas like qiyas dalala, al-aqs, shibh, etc., as well as in tahqiq al-manat, the verification of the hinge, takhrij and tahqiq al-manat, and all of these qiyas analogies needs maqasid consideration to work properly and needs maqasid consideration beforehand in order to be fruitful in their results. Now, an essential part of expanding the role of ta'lil through maqasid for Bin Bayyah is that maqasid are a crucial part of ijtihad fil illah in the ratio legis. The maqasid appears particularly relevant for ta'lil bil kulli, as it says, ratiocination through universal or by universals. Now, the unattested maslaha, for example, or unattested suitability falls under this category of ta'lil. The latter, munasib al-mursala, unattested suitability, consists in the attachment by the mere presence of maslaha without any attestation from a specific textual foundation. In this case, it is as if maslaha has become a special effective cause in itself. This cannot be called, strictly speaking, juridical analogy, because it does not consist in carrying a hidden particular to a more manifest particular as a consequence of a common effective cause between them. In the case of ijtihad by unattested maslaha or suitability, we are in front of a form of ta'lil consisting in the istidlal of a particular from a universal in according to specific conditions. Whereas the second muqaddimah regarding that, Bin Bayyah argues that maqasid constitutes the natural environment of the efficient cause. Most of the efficient causes are maqasid itself. For him, for Bin Bayyah, the activation of usul al-fiqh in the light of maqasid, so taf'il al-usul al-fiqh in the light of maqasid, serves as a way to expand the capacity of istidlal and as a muqaddimah to ma'qul al-nas. The same way as linguistics, mabahith al-lughawiyya, serve as a prelude or a muqaddimah to the dalalat al-alfaz, signification of expressions. This role of maqasid in tajdeed for Bin Bayyah is mainly based on two elements. First, the activation of usul al-fiqh in the light of maqasid. And second, taking into consideration the principle of mutual attraction between the universal and the particular. Now, these two last elements are important, and this is why I want to explain them going near to the conclusion also, is that for Bin Bayyah, activating usul al-fiqh in the light of maqasid is necessary to expand the role of four usuli circles, or four usuli dawa'ir, as he called them. And they are the core of istidlal. So maqasid is important to expand the core of istidlal. Those are the istihsan, istislah, the deduction of legal analogies, istinbad al-akisa, and taking into consideration the anticipation, ma'adat, and the means, al-dharaya, of legal injunctions. Now, in usul al-fiqh terms, for Bin Bayyah, employing maqasid in the structure of usul al-fiqh in these four circles means that sometimes the meaning of a maqasid might take a meaning of a particular, i.e. that of attaching a new case to a particular original case in a specific locus, and this constitutes the normal qiyas. Some other times, the integration of maqasid means that to bring into the existence a legal norm based solely on a universal, in the cases where no particular case exists for the issue under analysis, and this is istislah. And other times, maqasidi consideration might require the exemption of a particular from its established universal based on a specific feature of the particular that requires such exemption. And this is istihsan. And lastly, the maqasidi deliberation might require changing the outward meaning of a legal injunctions in light of an anticipation of its effects. And this is the sad al-dhara'a. Regarding the second aspect, Bin Bayyah highlights the mutual relationship between the universals and the particulars, and the way they should be considered as in a mutual interaction between them. After quoting Shatibi and his emphasis on the harmony between universals and particulars, Bin Bayyah says that when a particular and universal clash with each other, it is obligatory for the mujtahid to reconcile them. And in case this is not possible, then neither the universal nor the particular should be preferred over the other in an unqualified way. The reason for this resides in the possibility that the mujtahid might realize the particular a specific meaning that makes it stand alone from the universal and take another legal norms different from that dictated by the universal. For Bin Bayyah, this is the heart of istihsan, which means the exclusion of a particular from a universal. Also, sadd al-dhara' constitutes another case where, in the light of the anticipated effects, the particular takes the place of a universal and the legal norm is given following the dictates of the particular. Other time, as in the case of unattested maslaha, the particular is divested of all the meanings and is absorbed and controlled by the universal. All these possible scenarios are left to the careful, rational, and textual consideration of mujtahid, but all of them require a maqasidi understanding and of the relationship between the universal, which is the domain of the maqasid, and the particular. And as the conclusion, Bin Bayyah, during his analysis, have argued that maqasid are important they are important for the manzuma to ta'lil, and they can serve as a muqaddimah for any kind of ta'lil, and can reach and expand the scope of ta'lil. But he argues more than that. In his view, maqasid are also part of all the chapters of the usul al-fiqh. And without the maqasid, usul al-fiqh is deficient, whereas without maqasid, without usuli consideration, maqasid are ineffective and fruitless. Now, what he argues here is that maqasid are not only embedded in the very fabric of usul al-fiqh, but they are the heart of usul al-fiqh. And the relation of maqasid with usul al-fiqh resembles that of the spirit with the body. And this is a bold claim. Now, Bin Bayyah offers more than 30 ways that are beyond the manzumat ta'lil per se, more than 30 examples or more than 30 ways in which maqasid are blended in the text of usul al-fiqh, are necessary for its sound functioning, and are actually the heart of usul al-fiqh. Now, we do not have the time to go through all of them. I just will mention 3 or 4 examples, and then that's it. So the first, for example, is the first case that you mentioned is when a general text is specified by a maqasid. So maqasid specify a general text. This is, for example, the case of the Maliki school of thought, where the menstruating women that exempt the menstruating women from the general prohibition of touching the Quran while she is in a state of impurity. This exemption is based on istihsan, because the application of the original legal norms to the menstruating women would render difficult for her to resemble the remembrance of the Quran and its memorization. Another case is the elucidation of an ambiguous expression, mujmal, through a maqasidi meaning. For example, the Hanafis have understood the ambiguous term qur'u as menstruation. This is based on the understanding that waiting period of a woman has been legislated for the purpose of ensuring that the woman is not pregnant, and menstruation is a sign that confirms this fact. Another example, for example, is the origination of the legal norms about which there is no considered suitability. This is what is known as the unattested suitability that refers back to the unattested maslaha. An illustration of this is the creation of the establishment of prison system by the Caliph Umar ibn Abdul Aziz as a deterrence from criminals. Now I see that time is running a little bit, so I'm not going to mention the 4th and the 5th case, But as you see, the fourth case is making preponderance between the two general texts in the light of Maqasid, or relying on Maqasid to preserve the blocking of the means. And Bin Bayyah goes like this for 30 ways that for him proves that Maqasid are the heart of Usul al-Fiqh. Now, the ways, the interconnection between Maqasid and Usul al-Fiqh that Bin Bayyah demonstrate the inseparability and mutual relation between the two domains of law. The ways articulated by Bin Bayyah are indeed a strong argument for the intermingling of Maqasid with Usul al-Fiqh. And Bin Bayyah has done a tremendous service to the debate on this issue by proposing and articulating them. The cases mentioned by Bin Bayyah demonstrate the insufficiency and the strictly linguistic or textual considerations in understanding the correct legal judgment for particular cases. However, in my view, a closer look at the examples presented shows that the invocation of Maqasid considerations come into play only when strictly usuli deliberations fail to provide the sound legal outcome. The linguistic and textual consideration appear to be still the central usuli way to arrive at the correct inference of legal norms from textual sources. The Maqasid factor, although it is part of usul al-fiqh, seems still an auxiliary dimension mobilized by the mujtahid to provide legal clarity for cases whose legal meaning cannot be grasped by strictly usuli analysis. Bin Bayyah claimed that the above-mentioned cases prove that Maqasid are the heart of usul al-fiqh, and that Maqasid are to usul like the soul to the body, seems to me to be slightly far-fetched or unjustified. This was pretty much what the project of Bin Bayyah constituted. Is the role of Maqasid in the history of usul al-fiqh, the role of Maqasid in the system of ta'leel, and the role of Maqasid generally as central to the usuli ijtihad. Thank you very much.